Yeah, let's start with Illinois. This to me, Trip, of all the win totals here, this to me is the most shocking. FanDuel has Illinois' win total at 7.5. A team we've talked about just a few weeks ago as one of the teams definitively in the college football playoff race, as a contender. Vegas is saying that they're about to be 7-5, 8-4. I mean, when you talk about a win total, I think they're going over. This to me is the most confident over-under total that we will go through here of all 18 teams. I think for me, this is the easiest over. You look at the production coming back for Illinois. They have third most in the country in terms of returning production. The big question, right, for them is receiver. But I think you do trust Luke Altmaier. I trust the run game and Brett Bielema along with that defense as well to make enough plays to have this team where I think their floor, Trip, is 9-3. Like, you look at their schedule, right, at IU early in the season that we've talked about, that game could kind of be a fork in the road kind of game. Where you're going, I think they win that game. I think your two toughest games in terms of talent, Ohio State, USC, both home. At Washington, really tough. But of those four games, I think Illinois can go 2-2. Maybe you lose a game along the way you shouldn't. I don't see this team going less than 9-3, which for me makes this 7.5 number over under. I think an easy over.
Well, it's a really good team that returns a lot of really important pieces in the trenches on the defensive side of football. And of course, having probably the most experienced quarterback in the Big Ten in Luke Altmaier. But it is like, I can understand how you come up with that number when you look at how many close games the Illini won last year, the chance of those games swinging the other way. And it was an offense that typically with a Brett Bielema team, you think physical, run the football. And they had to get it done with the passing game. And to lose Bryant and Franklin, 109 receptions, 1,600 yards, 14 touchdowns. Yeah, they added some pieces at the wide receiver position, but it was a run game last year that finished 79th nationally. So it's a run game that wasn't all that good. So can Luke Altmaier take care of the football, right? That's the big thing for him. Mm-hmm. Can he manage the football, give him a chance to win the games, and can they be really successful in close games? I'm with you. I think it's a slam dunk for the Illini. We're both really high on Illinois. They have pizzazz, they have momentum, and it feels like the season they had 2 years ago was a bit of an anomaly under Brett Bielema, that it is a program trending in the right direction. Do I ever believe they're going to be at the point of an Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Oregon, USC? No, probably not. They probably don't have the recruiting base to do it. They probably don't have the resources to get to that stage. But they've got an excellent in-game coach, and that's worth something too. Why do they win those tight games? Because he's a really good coach. So, yeah, I think it's a slam dunk for Illinois to be over that 7.5 total.
Let's go then to Indiana, as we both are confident in Illinois. Indiana's win total is actually 8.5, coming off the college football playoff berth last year, 11-1 in the regular season. I think this is an under here, Trip, just because of a few things. Number one, I think it is a lot to reshuffle your roster for the second year in a row and expect similar production. The offensive line, they did make some transfer portal additions, but that's still, you saw last year in the biggest games, that really was their Achilles heel. And last year, I think because I think they were talented and very well coached, part of their 11-1 run to the playoff was, right, schedule disparity, and they got a great break in the schedule. This year, not the case. Illinois at home, as we just talked about. You're at Iowa. You're at Oregon. You're at Penn State. I mean, you have to win at bare minimum one of those games here to eclipse that 8.5 win total, and then obviously win the rest of your games that you're supposed to win. I just think this is too many moving pieces, Trip, for Indiana to be 9-3. I think they are kind of 8-4, more in that range, which would be at least an anomaly here for Kirk Cignnetti. Last time he had 4 or more losses in a season. Got to go back to 2018 with IUP. So this is a guy who does consistently win 9, 10, 11 games a year. I think that we're going to see aggression from Indiana. When you look at the win total at 8.5, when you look at the schedule now they're facing, especially some of those tough road games, I think Indiana, I would take the under here on 8.5. How about you?
Well, I feel like they're the biggest winners in the portal by getting Francisco Mendoza from Cal. That automatically is going to give them a chance because you have a dual threat quarterback who I think adds an extra dimension to that offense. When you discuss what they did on the offensive line, those players that they brought in were from big schools, a guy from a Notre Dame, a guy from an Ohio State. Like, I think, and teams that have had a lot of success. So I think Curt Cignetti in year one caught a lot of the Big Ten by surprise. This year, they're not going to catch the Big Ten by surprise. They're going to have a target on their back. He was brash the way he went about it. Teams are going to gear up for Indiana. So you lose that element. But what he identified during the course of the portal and throughout the early offseason was, what do we need to do to build ourselves into not just a flash and dash surprise team in the league, but when we get into those big games and those big environments against some of those teams that you mentioned, they eluded last year on their schedule, how do we beat them? And I think he did a really good job of addressing weaknesses, but to do it in one off season and to know that Indiana's going to have a target on its back now, that's the biggest thing to me. Indiana's not sneaking up on anybody anymore.
True.
So I agree with you. I'm going with the under, and I think Indiana is under that 8.5 total.
How about Iowa here? I want to throw this over to you first because we talked about the Hawkeyes here a few weeks ago. Maybe if things go right, could be maybe one of those dark horse Indiana Cinderella playoff teams here. Vegas has their win total at 7.5. Trip, how do you look at that number?
Man, I really think it's an over for Iowa. I do believe in the Hawkeyes. I know we talked a lot and we got a lot of feedback on social media from our great fans listening. Mark Gronowski, I think, is a big difference maker as a two-time national champion quarterback from the FCS level. The thing is, and you talked about it, I know you replied to a couple of people on social media, like he's out for spring practice. So what's that acclimate? That's a big deal to be out for spring practice. What's that acclimation process going to be like for him over the summer, the installs? If there's a guy to do it, right, is an experienced quarterback like that. It's not like you're trying to ingratiate a freshman like a Bryce Underwood to take over your system where maybe it's a little bit more important. But again, he's coming from the outside in to this Tim Lester offense. It's like, okay, how is it going to work with him? I don't have questions. I can't believe I'm saying this. With Kamari Moulton at the running back position, with a veteran quarterback, and they're going to be good on the offensive line, I actually don't have questions about Iowa's offense. And I'm not saying they're going to be like one of the best offenses in the Big Ten, but I feel like they're an offense that at least is going to be able to move the football and complement the defense. All that Iowa has to do to be successful is play complementary football. That's what their best teams do. And I'm not saying, hey, let's run the ball and get a couple first downs and then pin an opponent deep punting is going to be successful to eclipse that win total. My question's really, and I think it's an easy answer because it's Iowa. Well, how do you replace all that production that you're losing at linebacker? So for me, it's a no-brainer. You just have to expect that they're going to do it there. I think they're going to be good enough offensively. And I think Iowa can play complementary football at least well enough to eclipse the win total. So I'm going over for Iowa.
I'm with you. I agree. I think you laid it out well. And I think part of like the win total game that we play here, especially in April, right, it's kind of a numbers game, right? It's a math game, right? Who's on your schedule? Which games can you win and which are tough? Do you need to kind of squeak out one or two here? You look at Iowa's schedule. I think fair to say we can pencil wins in it. And please correct me if you disagree here, Trip. I think we can pencil in UMass as a win for Iowa. Albany, I think you could put down Michigan State, Rutgers, Minnesota at home. I think we could say is a win. I think Iowa can go on the road and win either at Nebraska or at USC. I think they can win at Wisconsin. Any of those that you say maybe we should not be penciling in wins for Iowa?
Man. It's so hard. It's so early. I like your train of thought. I like your train of thought. I can't sit here, you know me. I can't sit here April 2nd and declare, yep. I can't. That's not how I'm built. I like your train of thought. Is that fair?
Yes, that is for you. That is very fair here. So we'll take it. So that's about right there. 7 wins. And even if maybe you're listening disagree, then let's just take one off. 6 wins. We're looking at 6 wins then for Iowa so far that I think you can fairly confidently say they should win. And then you're asking them to get 1 or 2, depending on how you feel, wins against Iowa State, Penn State, Oregon, Indiana, 3 of those games at home. And maybe again at Nebraska, USC. That's, if you disagree there, you got to go on the road and win one of those. Like, I think that the path and the number for Iowa to get to 8 here is pretty reasonable. And like you said, I like their offense is going to be the best it's been in a long time. So even though the defense, especially like you said, a linebacker may take a step back here, this is the year I think that Iowa's offense can actually take an increased role in terms of winning games and balance it out to where I think at bare minimum, I think 8-4 is very attainable, very likely, which would put Iowa over the 7.5 mark. So far, Trip, we are 3 for 3 here. Iowa win total 7.5, we both think over. Indiana win total 8.5, we both say under. Illinois win total 7.5, we both say over. Here's one of the lower ones here in the conference, Trip. That's Maryland. Maryland's win total is 4.5. I like the over here. And again, that's not saying much. I'm not sitting here saying Maryland's going to be this good team or not, but I think they can get to bare minimum here 5 wins. I like Justin Martin's fit in Mike Locksley's offense. I think he's a good, talented quarterback that really can develop nicely under a guy that knows how to develop quarterbacks and have some high-flying offenses. So I think he fits well. And then again, you play the schedule game. They have FAU, should win that one. Northern Illinois, Towson. So your non-conference is very easy. What Maryland's done, to their credit, I feel like every year, they always start 3-0. They always give some fans reason for hope, and they have, they put up like a 50-point game, get you excited. But now, again, the number is 5 here. We just got to get over 4.5. Can you get 2 wins from this group of teams at Wisconsin, at UCLA, at Rutgers, at Illinois, home against Michigan, home against Michigan State? All we're doing is looking for 2 here. I think the UCLA game, very winnable. Rutgers game, very winnable. Michigan State at home, very winnable. Bare minimum, those 3. I think you can get 2 wins out of that group. I think Maryland goes over. Again, I don't even think they're going to be a bowl team. I think they're probably sitting there at 5-7, but still 5-7 Trip. In this exercise of 4.5 win total, take the over on the Terps.
I think it's a conservative number. I think it's a safe play to assume a team with that non-conference schedule is going to go over. But if you start to look back through the years at Mike Locksley's teams, and obviously they had some good teams, right? They went 8-5 in 2023, but they were still just 4-5 in the Big Ten. In 2022, they went 8-5 overall, but they were just 4-5 in the Big Ten. In 2021, they were 7-6 overall, but they were still 3-6 in the Big Ten. So you asking where are they going to get 3 Big Ten wins with this roster compared to those teams they had a couple years ago? They were 4-8 last year and 1-8 in the Big Ten. I think it's even a stretch to say they're going to win and be guaranteed to win all 3 of those non-conference games, albeit, and look, I have not done a deep dive into FAU or Northern Illinois here yet this offseason. I'll give them this. They should beat Towson. I actually kind of think they're at the end of the line. It feels like it's time for a change at Maryland, that they've been stuck a little bit. Right now, football's on the back burner for them after what happened with their athletic director and their basketball coach, which was a really, really messy situation. So I think having the continuity going into this year probably actually helps with Mike Locksley, because that athletic department's a bit of a mess right now. But I think slow start. Everyone's going to see new athletic director, writing on the wall. That AD is going to want their own head coach. I think it goes the wrong way for Maryland. I actually think they go under that total. Even with Justin Martin, I agree. I'm kind of bullish on it too. I think he's a decent fit there. But I just think this league, if you can't go 1-8 in your first year where you're finally not a part of a grueling Big Ten East, how can I expect you to do better than that the next year? I can't. So I'm going under with Maryland.
If you're right, Trip, and you can't, beat UCLA, you can't beat Rutgers, albeit on the road, but still, I'm with you. I think we're probably looking at a change here. And like I said, I think end of the road here for Mike Locksley. And maybe you do a clean sweep, new AD, new basketball coach, and now after this season, add a new football coach here as well. Yeah, this could be, I think fair to say, even again, forget the win total. This is a big year for Mike Locksley. I think just to get this team to a bowl, which I think very fair to say is an uphill climb for where the Terps are and how they've performed in the Big Ten, especially under his watch. It's not been pretty whatsoever. Here's, I think, one of the more intriguing win total numbers here we're going to get into, Trip. That's Michigan. Vegas has their number at 8.5 this season. I would take the under on this number. I think for a few reasons. Number one, we've talked about this before. I think it's a lot to expect Bryce Underwood to come in and light the world on fire. Just because we've seen in college football plenty of heralded 5-star quarterbacks come in and not make an impact right away. Really, outside of Trevor Lawrence with Clemson, in 2018, there's not been many true freshman quarterbacks to come in and lead their team to a conference title or lead them to double-digit wins. Like, it's rare to see a true freshman come in and light the world on fire immediately. That plus also a tough schedule, but especially on the road, where week 2 at Oklahoma, that's a really, really tough game. Washington, which I'm very high, and I think that even them coming to the Big House is a very, very tough game for the Wolverines. You're at Nebraska, tough, hostile environment. You're at USC. Ohio State comes to town. I know you've had their number here the last few years, but Ohio State is going to be, again, one of the most talented teams in the country. You look at those 5 games in general, Trip, right? If we're saying Michigan over here, and we're saying at least 9-3, Michigan then bare minimum in those 5 games at Oklahoma, Washington, at Nebraska, at USC, Ohio State, bare minimum has to go 2-3 in that 5-game stretch and then not lose any other game on their schedule. I just think it's a lot to ask. I think they're still working on replacing some big pieces, especially on the defense here as well. I think Michigan, look, 8-4, respectable year. I would take, though, the under on the 8.5. How about you?
Yeah, I think Michigan fans aren't going to want to hear this, but after last season, obviously optimism where the program is going, and rightfully so. But for me, this year is kind of like what we talked about with Nebraska in 2024, 2025, where you want to see growth, development, and you want to see the program moving in the right direction. I don't know that Nebraska had that continuity last year and the optimism that they were looking for going into 2025. For Michigan, it's more about how do you look, how do you get to where you want to go, then where are you at right now? Now, it's Michigan. I could very easily see this being a 9 or 10 win team. I do think the safe bet here, though, is the under for the reasons you outlined. I think it's still going to be a really tough year. Now, unlike Nebraska, we're really sure after this past year what their direction is. I think it's going to be a good year for Michigan. I think it's going to be a really good year, but not necessarily a good year for their win total. So I'm going to go under.
I actually like the way you phrased that, because I think both can be true. You can win 8 games next year, and maybe that feels like a disappointment with some people putting Michigan in the college football playoff contender conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But like, if Bryce Young, to your point, whether he starts week 1 or starts week 5, whatever, week 7, if he develops and all of a sudden plays well at the end of the year, there is reason, like, you can consider 2025 a good year, even if it means 7 or 8 wins. I like the way you phrase that, because both can be true.
And you said, well, people are putting them in the conversation for the college football playoff. Well, if they get to 9 wins, they're in the conversation. Like 9 wins, Michigan, that schedule in the Big Ten, that means, well, they probably won't make it at 9-3, but that's 1 win from a college football playoff team. So, yeah, of course they're going to be in the conversation, especially when your toughest game is your last game. Like, you go into that game 9-2, with a chance to beat Ohio State to get 10-2, probably in the playoffs. So, I can see them being in the conversation during the year. I don't know that it will always be pretty. I'm not sure it will always be perfect, but I do feel that they're trending the right way. It's just with everything they lost on the defensive side, Graham, Grant, it's so much to replace. I think Michigan's still a year away.
I would agree. We both take the under. Michigan 8.5. How about across the state? Michigan State, their number according to Vegas 5.5. I think this team is trending up. I'll take the over here, Trip. I think Aiden Childs becomes a little bit more consistent here in year number 2. Yep. Jonathan Smith is a builder. He does have his teams. Now, it's a slow build, but he usually does have his teams increase their win total and kind of slowly, progressively get better each and every year. So I think you're going to see a little bit more improvement from last season. And again, 5.5 years, so we got to get to 6 on the over. Mm-hmm. Playing the schedule game, playing the win-loss game. Youngstown State, Boston College comes to town, and Western Michigan. I feel pretty safe and confident saying you should win all 3 games. Now, I think it's also fair to say UCLA comes to town, Maryland comes to town. I think for Michigan State, you could pencil both of those games in as a win. So we're looking at 5 wins here between Maryland, UCLA, Youngstown State, Boston College, Western Michigan. You need 1 upset, Trip. 1 upset to get the over and hit a bowl game between USC on the road, Nebraska on the road, Indiana on the road, Michigan comes to town. You're at Minnesota, Penn State, and at Iowa. A lot of road games there. a lot of tough environments. But I think this team, and you saw it last year when they beat Iowa at home on a Friday night. They have, I think, enough talent on this roster so they can get one team and surprise you. And I think we can see out of that group we just said, one surprise win from Michigan State to get them to 6, get the over, and get Sparty back to a bowl game. 5.5 for Michigan State. I like the over here.
And I think they were kind of on the wrong end of what was a really tough schedule last year. They played Ohio State. They scored 7 points. They played Oregon. They scored 10 points. They played Michigan. They scored 17 points. They played Indiana. They scored 10 points. They played at Illinois. They scored 16 points. That they had to play Ohio State, Oregon, Iowa, Michigan, Indiana, and Illinois last year. That is an incredibly tough Big Ten schedule. Now, there were some real clunkers in there. Their loss at the end of the year against Rutgers, 41-14, was not a good loss.
No, it was not.
And they were sloppy. They committed a lot of penalties. They turned the ball over. They couldn't run the ball. That all has to be fixed offensively. But I'm going to say they were on the wrong end of a really tough schedule last year. I agree with you. I think Aiden Childs and Jonathan Smith, they have the potential. Jonathan Smith, a builder of a program. Aiden Childs, we've seen the potential to make big plays. He gets Nick Marsh back at wide receiver. They brought in a transfer running back from Sacramento State, but they're going to have to run the ball better. They're going to have to play better defense. I think 5.5 is tough for a team that was that bad last year. I think they were so riddled with so many mistakes throughout the entire year. The turnovers, the penalties, it just kept racking up. I'm going to go under again for Michigan State. I think that's one of the toughest ones on here, but I'm going to go under for Michigan State.
Let's move in. We have 3 more here, at least in batch number 1 of Big Ten win totals here for 2025. Minnesota, who has been the model of consistency under PJ Fleck, constantly winning 7 or 8 games. Their number according to Vegas here, 6.5 trip. I think this is a tough one for me, so I'll throw it to you first here. Over under here on Minnesota's 6.5 win total.
Yeah, I'm going to go over just based on what PJ Fleck has done with his Golden Gophers the last couple of seasons. I know there are a lot of moving pieces, and what usually is a strength of Minnesota, regardless, is their offensive line. I still believe in what PJ Fleck kind of has done there during his time. So I think it's an over. I get why you may say under on it. Like, what is your feeling on Minnesota for 2025? Because I've come around on them the last couple of months. I thought, look, it might be time to move on. I don't know. PJ Fleck's maybe a little more talk than he actually is walking. I've never been a big PJ Fleck guy, but then when you start to dive into it, he's done a pretty good job there maximizing what they've got. So I'm going over with Minnesota.
I would agree. I don't think he gets the credit he deserves in the sense of just, like you said, I think maximizing the resources and talent you have. Minnesota's never going to recruit like some of the big boys in the Big Ten. But I think PJ Fleck does a really good job of identifying those 2- and 3-star guys, kind of like what Iowa's done for a while, and make them play like 4 or 5 stars. But with that said, when you look at Minnesota,
but in 3 of the last 4 years, 3 of the last 4 years, they had 9 wins, and 8 wins. 2023, they were 6 and 7. Now, I know they were playing in a Big Ten West, and now you're playing the entire league, and it's a different looking league. To be that successful year in, year out, I think it's a safer bet to say the over. You know, the roster, looking at it in a vacuum, or like really tight on just, is that the right phrasing? I'm battling my voice. If you're looking at it just the 20,
no, in a vacuum, you're right. You nailed it.
If you're looking at just the 2025 Minnesota Golden Gophers, everything points to under. But if you look at big picture, what PJ Fleck has accomplished and maximizing what his teams are and being competitive and finding a way to win a couple of games maybe they shouldn't, and just hanging around and getting to a bowl game, 6.5 is low for them. So I'm going to say the safer bet is over for Minnesota.
Fleck has been consistent. As you just said, he does have his teams playing, 8, 9 wins, taking the under would be foolish with what he's done the last few years. I, though, I guess will be a fool here and I would take the under on Minnesota in 2025. What scares me the most, Trip, is the fact that you have a new quarterback and really an offensive line that's revamped, where you lose 3 out of your 5 starters. And so I think when you have that combination of a new O-line and a new quarterback, I just don't think things can click that quickly. I think it could spell a tough year for the Golden Gophers here in 2025, along with, you got a tough non-conference game at Cal early in the year. That's not exactly easy. You're at Ohio State, at Iowa, at Oregon. Like, you have 4 really brutal road games that, even for how consistent Minnesota's been, I don't think they win any of those. And I'm at least believing in Michigan State enough to where I think Michigan State is good enough to go on the road to Minnesota and win. I think Nebraska can win in Minneapolis here as well. So I think for me, like 6.5, I think this could be still a bowl game, or excuse me, a bowl team at 6-6. I just don't think the 7, 8, 9 win seasons that we've seen over the last few years, I don't think that's what we're seeing here in 2025 in Minneapolis.
Next one, Nebraska. Theirs is set at 7.5. I'm going to go with the over.
Taking the over on the Huskers. Why?
I think it's just, if you look at Matt Rule's track record, I keep coming back to these coaches and what their track records are. Matt Rule, when he gets somewhere in his 3rd year, it's usually the year that the program ascends. I'm really uncomfortable with the amount of turmoil and the way last season ended. But it felt like they got the right pieces in at the end of the year. It took a while to get there. And then you have to believe in the quarterback, right? It's a lot of experience. There was a lot that went wrong. He's going to all these events, and you got the Patrick Mahomes. I don't know why. Something just feels off about Nebraska still. I don't know what it is. But Matt Rule's track record, the moves he's made, being bold in the portal, being bold in the coaching portal, I'll call it. I feel like I have to trust him and believe in it. Their schedule's not the most difficult. I know you outlined it as easy wins: Cincinnati, Akron, Houston Christian, Northwestern, Michigan State, at Maryland, at UCLA. I'll take the over on the 7.5. I'll believe in Matt Rule, and I'll believe in Dylan Raiola.
I'm much more, I'm taking the over too, but boy, oh boy, I am much more optimistic than you. I think Dylan Raiola does take a step here in year number 2. Dana Holgorsen now finally there for a full off season, so you can kind of get that offense really settled for the first time. You went to the portal, I think made really good additions in terms of getting playmaking wide receivers. That was not the case last year. So I think those receivers make some more plays. They help Raiola and his game go to the next level. And like you said, again, part of this is playing the schedule game. When you talk about win totals, you just outline those easy wins. That's Cincinnati, Akron, Houston Christian. That's 3 right there. Northwestern's 4, Michigan State 5, at Maryland 6, at UCLA 7. I think right there, as long as Nebraska does not, shoot themselves in the foot, those are 7 wins that they should have on their schedule. Put them in pen, Trip. Put it in permanent ink. 7 wins right there. So now you look at the games remaining on their schedule. I think there's only 1 game on their entire schedule that we could chalk up as an L right away, no chance. I think it's at Penn State. Then you look at the middle tier of teams they can beat: Michigan, USC, Iowa. 3 of those games, by the way, at home, at Minnesota, all just to get over the 7.5 win total. All you got to do is win one of those 4 games: Michigan, USC, Iowa at home, or on the road at Minnesota. I think we're looking at worst here for the Huskers, 9-3. I think Matt Rule, like you said, does always have his programs take that big leap in year 3, gets to double-digit wins. In most cases, not this year, I don't think, but in most cases, whether it's Temple or Baylor, he has gotten to the conference championship game. I don't think we're going to see that here for the Cornhuskers in 2025, but I think this could be a 9-3 team, continue to go in the right direction. I think they make a big leap here in 2025. I'm bullish. I know we both took the over there, but it does feel like maybe my belief level, your belief level on different wavelengths here. But I think either way, we're looking at a solid season for the Cornhuskers in 2025, at least in terms of the win total. Over on the Huskers. Finally, Trip.
hold on. That lacks suspense for me. So college football playoff or not for Nebraska for you?
No.
Okay.
I would say no. I think they're in the Michigan camp of, depending on when they like lose some of their games, could they in the middle of October kind of be one of those teams in the hunt?
Mm-hmm.
Possibly, yeah. I think they could be in the hunt. That Penn State game is later on in the year, if I'm not mistaken. So I think the only game they can't win is in November. So at least, again, if we're talking about middle of October, let's just pick a random date, October 15th. Who are you talking about a team like Nebraska in the hunt? I think so. Versus like Michigan, some of those tough games are early on where I think maybe a loss or two kind of knocks you down. They got to build back up. I would say no playoff for Nebraska, but I think they could be a team when we're sitting there halfway through the year of how many Big Ten teams could make the playoff. I think we're talking about Nebraska in that conversation. I'm assuming because of your, I don't say dourness, but maybe not all in mindset, you are not saying Nebraska anywhere near the playoff.
No, absolutely not. But I do believe I'll go with the over.
All right. So let's finish off. Well, let's finish off on a low note here, Trip. The win total that is tied for the lowest in the conference in 2025, one of the lowest win totals, at least of the Power Four in college football, is Northwestern. 3.5 is their win total. I'm going to say over, Trip. I think they can get to 4 wins here. You have Preston Stone coming in at quarterback, coming over from SMU, who got benched early last year. He did not have a good year. But in 2023, in his lone year as a full-time starter, put up some big-time numbers, got SMU's offense going. I think right now, on paper, you can say that Preston Stone is the best quarterback Northwestern has had since Clayton Thorson. And now that those Clayton Thorson days are getting longer and longer away. But if you think about it and look at Northwestern last year, they went 4-8. They won 4 games with their quarterbacks combining to throw 7 touchdown passes. That's it. 7. All from Jack Lausch, by the way. So you're getting bare minimum better quarterback play. You have wins on your schedule against, at least in the non-conference, Western Illinois and Louisiana Monroe.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you got some chances here. You play Purdue, you play UCLA. I think they have a chance here to win 4 games. Now, the only thing is, and I'm walking a little bit of a tightrope here. Those 4 games they just listed are they by far the most winnable games. The rest of Northwestern schedule, Trip, is murderer's row. And I think they have like no chance of basically the other 8. So I'm banking here that Northwestern wins the 4 games they should win to eclipse the over. I think they barely get it there for David Braun, but give me the over here for Northwestern. We're talking positive, albeit just forget that we're talking about 4 wins here. Give me the Wildcats over.
I'm also going with the over. I think they got a good quarterback, at least a quarterback that gives them a chance and can maybe make up for some deficiencies there. And look, they brought some other guys in on the offensive line that are really experienced, not from the biggest schools, but have a lot of experience. They have an experienced defensive backfield, have a couple of pretty good defensive ends on that roster. So, yeah, I think there's definitely enough talent there to go over the 3.5. I'll take the over as well for Northwestern. I think they're good enough, maybe a 5-win team. It's the Big Ten. It's really hard for me to say a team's not going to get to 4 wins. The safe bet's the over here. You have to believe that they're going to be better at the quarterback position. I don't know if it could go any worse than it did last year. And David Braun's tried to address positions of need, receiver, O-line, add a couple of pieces on defense, and they have a defensive secondary and a couple of good DNs. Sure, I'll take the over.
Ohio State, the reigning national champs, coming into 2025, tied for the highest over-under total in college football at 10.5. I think for me, I think it's going under. This team, I think, is going 10-2, just like they did last year, for 2 reasons. Number one, they have too much roster turnover for me to sit here and truly tell you they're going 11-1 or even 12-0. They have to replace quarterback, both running backs, wide receiver 2, 4 to 5 starting linemen from last year's offensive line, 8 starters on defense, including your entire defensive line. And one thing Tripp and I don't think I've talked about enough that I want to bring up here, they're also losing massive leadership across the board, offensively and defensively. That's going to be impossible to replace. Add in also, by the way, new coordinators for offense and defense, 2 new guys calling the plays. There's just a lot of change. Too much change for me to just say, oh, it's Ohio State. Of course they're going over. Of course they're going 11-1. I mean, think about it. Last year for the Buckeyes, right? You could argue maybe outside of 2015 or on par with 2015, that was the most or one of the most talented rosters Ohio State has ever had in their illustrious football history. And if they went 10-2 in the regular season last year with all these changes, I can't truly sit here and tell you I think they're going to be even better in the regular season this year. Reason number 1 is for all the turnover. Reason number 2 is the schedule. I know we rarely talk about Ohio State's schedule because 99% of the time, they are always the best team on everyone else's schedule. So it's not worth kind of playing the schedule game for the Buckeyes when they use your favorite in all but one, all their games. This year, though, the schedule is massively important and a big reason why I'm saying I'm taking the under. Look at these games they have to play. They got to go on the road to Washington, their first road game of the season, by the way. Hostile environment for all these new players kind of becoming starters and becoming relied upon for the first time. That's a really rough way to play your first road game in Washington. It's a place to be jumping early in the season. You're at Illinois, a team we expect to be in the playoff mix. Home against Penn State. Oh, by the way, before we even get to these Big Ten games, you got Texas coming to town week number 1, and then you're at Michigan. So if you think I'm crazy, if you disagree with Ohio State and me saying that they're going 10-2, you think they're going to be better than that record, then you're telling me right now that out of those 5 games, at Washington, at Illinois, at Michigan, along with home games against Penn State and Texas, 2 top 5 teams in the country, they're going 4-1? You really think they're going 4-1 in those 5 games? I don't. I do not. So this team's still a playoff team. They probably still will get a home game in the first round like they did last year. But when you look at their number at 10.5, I'm taking the under. I think they're going 10-2. I think this is going to be a repeat of last year in terms of the regular season. And then it's going to be a crapshoot here come playoff time. But I think Ohio State, when you look at their win total, take the under. Now let's go to Oregon here, also with the Buckeyes, tied for the highest over-under total in college football at 10.5. Now, the Ducks have a lot of the same questions and concerns as the Buckeyes do, right? They lost a lot of talent from last year's team. But with that said, give me the over for the Ducks. The difference between Oregon and Ohio State. While they both lost a lot of proven talent and leadership, I think the Ducks did a better job in the transfer portal getting guys to where, yeah, they're new to Oregon, but they've also played a lot of football. So the transition for them in terms of coming in, plug and play, and I think playing at a high level quickly works better for them versus Ohio State. I think they got more ready-made players, proven players, compared to the Buckeyes. They did some work in the portal, but a lot of the starters here in 2025 will be backups in 2024 and in 2023. So at least Oregon, I think, has done a better job in the portal of getting guys ready to play right now that can hit the ground running, that have proven it, albeit at different schools, but still at least have proven it in college football versus Ohio State, a lot of unproven guys. And then I think when you look at Oregon here, I have them going 11-1. Not going 12-0 like last year, but I think they're going to just get caught up in the regular season, one game at Penn State. We'll get to that game here from the Nittany Lions perspective in a little bit, but outside of that, I think they will win at Washington. That's a really tough game, though, for the Ducks. You're at Iowa, really tough game, but I think they're more talented. IU and USC both come to town. I think Oregon, I'm taking the over here. I think we're going to see Oregon for the second year in a row back in the Big Ten title game, and they, to me, I think right now are going to be one of the best teams in the country. We'll see how, their quarterback situation develops. Give me the Ducks over 10.5 wins here in 2025. Then finally, in terms of the big hitters, the biggest win totals in the Big Ten and the biggest win totals in college football, Penn State, like Oregon, like Ohio State, also here 10.5. I'm taking the over. I think Penn State, similar to what I just said at Oregon, can go 11-1. What I like a lot about Penn State, why I'm believing, because if they go 11-1, or dare I say 12-0, they would, for the first time under James Franklin, I think truly meet and even exceed expectations going to a season. Penn State's gone all in here in 2025, and I think they come up and deliver. Because when you look at the roster, right, you bring back Drew Aller, who had a rough end against Notre Dame, but I still think he's one of the best quarterbacks in all of college football. You bring back the best running back duo in Nick Singleton and Katron Allen. Both can easily go over 1,000 yards. You bring back 4 out of your 5 offensive linemen. That's key. I know you lose Tyler Warren, who's by far your best offensive player, and you lose Abdul Carter, by far your best defensive player, probably 2 top 10 picks in the draft. So you lose your 2 best players from 2024. Not ideal. But with what Penn State brought back, keeping denied Dennis Sutton, who was the opposite defensive end of Abdul Carter, who I think can have an Abdul Carter-like season in 2025 in terms of disruption, in terms of attention he's going to get from defenses. You have Jim Knowles coming in. And early on, you're seeing reports of Zakee Wheatley, Penn State safety, kind of fitting in that Caleb Downs rover role. Now, he's not going to be as good as Downs. That's just disrespectful to the talent Downs has. He's by far the best safety in all of college football. But I think Wheatley can fill that role at a pretty high level where it's not going to be Downs-like production, but I think it could be close. He could play that position really well here. Penn State has some good production coming back in the secondary. As well, they've recruited well. You bring Jim Knowles in, and Penn State's been a top 10 defense for the last 5 or 6 years perennially. I think Knowles can take them to the top 3 level this year, the talent they have coming back. And look, it's going to come down to the receivers, I think. It's going to come down to this season for Drew Aller and which transfer portal receiver, which even freshman receiver can step up here for Penn State. It kind of feels like that's been the one position holding them back the last few years. You got to get it right. You know, you went Kyron Hudson from USC. You made a few other moves here as well. I think they can get enough production at receiver to be sitting here at 11-1 or even 12-0 to go in the schedule here. Again, Oregon comes to town, and I think that the time of when they play is huge for Penn State because that game is in late September. We just talked about all the movement for Oregon and the new faces they have trying to work them in. That game being in early September, not a month later, not 6 weeks later, works in Penn State's favor, along with them being at home, because you got to think Oregon's still going to be working through the kinks. Remember last year? Remember how the Ducks started the season? Close win against Idaho. Holding on for DLF against Boise State. Now, I know Boise State was a better team than we thought, but still, like they got out of the block slow, but we saw Oregon every single week get better as the season went on. If they come out of the block slow again here in 2025, that benefits Penn State, who has more continuity, who's going to be at home, to hit the ground running in that late September game and get a win against an equally, if not more talented Oregon team when they do come to town there in late September. So that schedule quirk works for Penn State. The one loss I think they will have is at Ohio State. Look, they've not won there in a long time. So I'm still, even though I think Ohio State can go under on their win total of 10.5, I still think Ohio State deserves the benefit of the doubt when they play Penn State, especially at home. I think Penn State has to prove it. I can't truly right now sit here this early on in the season and be like, yeah, Penn State deserves the benefit of that. They're going to go in there and win. Now, that said, this is the best chance Penn State has of beating Ohio State in the shoe. This is by far the most talented team they have and the most vulnerable Ohio State's been. They should win that game. But I'm not going to do that right now because I think Ohio State still deserves the benefit of the doubt here. So I'm going to say at Ohio State, it's a loss for Penn State. And then you look at the other tricky games they have at Iowa. They've won there. But that's always a tough game. And then Indiana comes to town. Otherwise, Penn State's got a pretty simple, pretty soft schedule. Their non-conference is 3 cupcakes. This team should be bare minimum. The floor, 11-1. They have a real chance, a legitimate chance here to go 12-0. Give me the over at Penn State, 10.5. Okay, so we went from heavy hitters here in Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State. 3 highest win totals in the Big Ten, 10.5 each. Let's go to the other side of the spectrum here. Purdue, their win total tied for the lowest with Northwestern in the Big Ten. Their win total, according to FanDuel, is 3.5. Depressing. And with that said, give me the under. Give me the under here for the Boilermakers. This is going to be a rough year. You look at their schedule here. They have so many moving parts. It's tough right now, especially before spring practice has even concluded, to kind of sit here and say how the team is looking. We'll get into more actually about Purdue here in spring intel, because Barry Odom actually did give, I think, some interesting analysis on what Purdue is going to try to do in the second spring portal window. We'll get into that here a little bit, but essentially, to at least spoil a little bit now, Barry Odom is not exactly, at least we'll say, thrilled about the roster it currently has. So when you look at Purdue coming in, all the turnover here, we'll look at the schedule. I think right now there are 2 guaranteed wins on their schedule. Ball State, Southern Illinois. That's it. Ball State, Southern Illinois, at least with those two games early, can come out of the gate strong and hot. But you talk about a murderer's row schedule for a team right now that is really bad. Ready for this? They have to face USC, at Notre Dame, a team that housed them last year, Illinois, you're at Minnesota, at Michigan, Ohio State, you're at Washington, Indiana comes to town. You still got to play Rutgers and Northwestern as well. I think we're sitting here at 2-10. But for those Boilermaker fans listening right now, 2-10 is depressing. But here's the positive. You have won 100% more games in 2025 than you did in 2024. Okay, improvement. You go from 1-11 to 2-10. You know what that means? The arrow is pointing up. So give me the under on Purdue at 3.5 wins. I think they're sitting there at 2-10. But compared to last year, okay, some positivity. Let's go to Rutgers. Their win total here for 2025 is 5.5. And if you're watching here on YouTube, I apologize. I just realized I have not moved the lower thirds. I have forgotten about that. My apologies. We're going to get this back on track here going forward, starting with Rutgers. 5.5 is their win total. Give me the under. And I take a sip of water. My apologies. Always sit by yourself. It's a lot more talking than I'm used to here. But give me the under on Rutgers 5.5. Now, Ethan Callick-McManus, their quarterback, is back, which is good for Rutgers. He played well last year. The receivers, for the most part, are back, which is encouraging. But you do lose Kyle Monangai, who I thought was the heart and soul of that offense last year. When you look at how Greg Schiano wants to win games, it is by running the football and playing great defense. You take away a great running back, and Kyle Monangai was a great running back for Rutgers. I just don't know what that identity of the offense is going to be and how effective they're going to be. Not to mention, you got some tough games against Iowa, at Minnesota, at Washington, Oregon, at Illinois, at Ohio State, Penn. Like, you are playing 1, 2, 3, 4. You're probably playing roughly 4 of the best teams in the Big Ten in 2025 with 2 of them on the road. Not to mention Washington on the road is a very tough ask. Maryland's a tough game. At Minnesota's a tough game. So look at their schedule. Ohio should be a win. Norfolk State should be a win. Miami of Ohio should be a win. And I think Purdue's a win. So if you're looking at Rutgers right now, those are 4 wins, 3 non-conference and Purdue. Then you got to find me 2 more wins. If you're saying Rutgers over, tell me the 2 wins they're getting here out of this group. Iowa, Maryland, at Minnesota, at Washington, Oregon, at Illinois, at Ohio State, Penn State. I can't find it. I think that they're going to be 5 and 7. Greg Schiano's done a good job here. I think, though, in 2025, they do take a small step backwards. Give me the under for Rutgers here at 5.5. Let's go from East Coast to West Coast. UCLA, their over-under win total is 4.5. Now, they've had a lot of changes. Coaching-wise, roster-wise, Ethan Garbers is out of eligibility. Justin Martin has gone to Maryland. So there's been a lot of turnover here. They bring in Tino Sunseri, who was the co-OC at Indiana. Now he's running the show and taking over for Eric Bieniemy as offensive coordinator for the Bruins. 4.5 is the number for UCLA. I'm going under. I just have too many questions. I have too many questions about the coaching staff, what this offense is going to look like, and too many questions right now about the roster. I just don't think they're good enough. And you look at their schedule, they should beat UNLV on the road, by the way. How about that? But UNLV should be a win. New Mexico should be a win. I think right now they have no chance when they play Penn State, Indiana, Ohio State, USC, Utah, Nebraska, and Washington. And so you look at, okay, 4.5 is the number. They got to get to 5. I told you UNLV, New Mexico wins. Those are 2. They're not beating any of those teams I just mentioned before. So now you have 3 toss-up games. You got to win 2 out of 3 versus Maryland, at Northwestern, at Michigan State. I don't think that. I think they can win 1. I don't think they can win 2. Give me the under here on UCLA. 4.5 is a total. Deshaun Foster, it's going to be, I think, a rough year 2 for him. They got to figure out an identity first and kind of go from there. But I think UCLA just kind of feel like they're just toiling in the wind right now. Let's go to let's go across LA here and talk about their counterpart here in USC. Their win total is 7.5. Lincoln Riley's had a lot of success recently on the recruiting trail. I don't, though, think that translates to success on the field here in 2025. Give me the under on USC 7.5. I just right now, I don't believe in Lincoln Riley in the sense of he can call a game to win a Big Ten style. We saw last year USC was in so many close games and lost by a play or a drive, mostly because of Lincoln Riley's stubbornness. This is a guy that we saw on multiple occasions. The running game was working and he abandoned it. Why? Because he wanted to throw the football. He's a coach to me that wants to win in a certain way, and he'd rather win in a certain way than win, period. And so going into 2025, I just can't believe that Riley's going to be able to put this team in position, especially offensively, to where he can call and adjust to a game and lean on your running game more. I don't think he's going to do it. I don't think he wants to do it. I don't think he's capable of doing it. So you look at their schedule here. They play Missouri State. Hot take here. That's a win. You play Georgia Southern. That's a win. You're at Purdue. You play Northwestern, and you play UCLA. Those are 5 wins on USC's schedule. We got to find 3 more here. I don't think they're going at Illinois and winning. I don't think they're going at Notre Dame middle of the year and winning. I don't think they're going at Oregon and winning. I don't think they're going to Nebraska and winning. So we got 5 wins, 4 losses for USC with 3 games hanging in the balance. They got to win all 3. If you're telling me USC over 7.5 wins, you think that bare minimum they're going 8-4, then that means they are beating Michigan State, Michigan, and Iowa. I don't think they're winning all 3. They can go 2-1 in that stretch. That gets you to 7 wins, though. And at 7-5, that is an under on 7.5. Until Lincoln Riley, to me, can prove that he can call a Big Ten-style game, not get away from the rushing attack, lean into what's working, not just fall in love with throwing the ball all over the yard and thinking that's going to be good enough here, especially in some of these hostile environments against really good defenses. Until he can actually prove he can do that, I'm not going to believe in him. I got to see it to believe it. Give me the under on USC 7.5. Let's go up north here to beautiful Seattle, where just like USC, Washington's win total here is also 7.5. I'm very bullish on the Huskies. If you listened to the pod a few weeks ago, to me, they're my dark horse college football playoff contender that can mirror what Indiana did last year, making an out of nowhere run to a playoff spot. I think when I look at this team and the schedule, I think the floor for them is 9-3. Not playoff worthy, but I think they pull off an upset that I don't see coming. You're right there, 10-2. You're probably in, or at least knocking on the door. But 9-3, you're in the conversation. I really am excited about Damon Williams now taking over full time. They have a good complement of weapons around him. That they are an elite home game. Haven't lost a home game in 3 years. And I think they'll be better on the road here in year number 2 under Jed Fish than they were last year. Basically unbeatable at home and extremely beatable on the road. I think they get better this year. So you look at their schedule: Colorado State, UC Davis, Wazoo, Rutgers, Purdue, at Maryland, at UCLA, at Michigan, at Wisconsin. I think they can win all 9, excuse me. I think they can go to Michigan and win. I think they can go to Wisconsin and win. We saw them get smoked by Rutgers last year on the road. Rutgers comes here. I just think they're a better team and now better built to win tough road games than they were this year. So they do play Ohio State, loss. They do play Illinois, loss. They do play Oregon, loss. Now, the good news is, and this is where I get optimistic, and this is where I still believe that Washington can be in the playoff conversation. Those 3 games against, again, 3 of the best teams in the Big Ten are all at home. So if you can take care of business against teams you are better than in those 9 games I just listed, and you pull off one home upset, you're sitting there at 10-2, and you have a very strong case to be in the playoff. I said it before in part number 1, my favorite over-under of the part 1 teams was Illinois, 7.5. That to me, I think they are going 9-3 at worst. My favorite bet here, my favorite number, the one I feel the most confident in this part 2 of win totals, it's Washington. 7.5. Hammer the over. Hammer the over. This team is winning bare minimum 9 games. They'll be in the mix here for a college football playoff spot. So we're going in alphabetical order. We have done 17 teams so far. The last team we're going to hit on, the Wisconsin Badgers. This is a big year 3 for Luke Fickell. There's a lot of pressure on him. It feels it does feel like a make or break year where I don't think he will get fired if things go sideways here in 2025. I think there's a chance, though, that he could get fired if things do, in fact, go sideways. I know he got an extension earlier this offseason. People are not going to be happy. The Badger fans are not going to be patient if you're looking at another backwards year for Wisconsin. The number for the Badgers this year is 5.5. It's a low number for what is supposed to be a big year for Luke Fickell. And with that said, give me the under. Give me the under on Wisconsin, 5.5. I won't even go through the roster. Look at this murderer's row schedule Wisconsin has to face this year. And you try to find me 6 wins. They play at Alabama early in the year. Return trip for when Bama came and smoked them at Camp Randall last year. At Michigan. Ohio State comes to town. At Oregon. At Indiana. At Minnesota. Did I say, and I think I said Indiana twice here. At Indiana. Home against Illinois. At Minnesota. Iowa comes to town. Washington comes to town. I mean, you look at those are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9 games. I think there are only 3 layup wins here. Miami of Ohio, they play Middle Tennessee and Maryland. So those are 3 wins. So if you think the Badgers are going to be bowl eligible, bare minimum next year, we are saying then you're winning 3 games. I'm going to go through one more time here. Find me 3 wins in this 9-game section. At Alabama, loss. At Michigan, loss. Ohio State comes to town, loss. At Oregon, loss. At Indiana, win a bowl, probably say loss. Illinois, at home, loss. At Minnesota, win a bowl, probably the most winnable game you have on your schedule. Iowa comes to town, maybe the same thing-ish, toss-up game. Iowa's going to have a better quarterback play this year. They play sound football. They don't beat themselves. And then Washington as well. We just talked about how I think they are, to me, a college football playoff dark horse here and going to be one of the best teams in the Big Ten. Find me 3 wins out of those 9 teams I just told you. And that's just to get to bare minimum 6 games in a bowl game. I think this is the under. But here's the optimistic thought I want to give you, Badger fans, is that I think Luke Fickell and Wisconsin can be a lot like 2024 Florida. Now, if you go back to last year, Billy Napier was on the hottest seat in all of college football. And I was in this group. I thought it was not a question of if he gets fired, but when he gets fired, in part because Florida had the toughest schedule in all of college football last year. It was brutal. Starting off with a home game against Miami in which Cam Ward went off and absolutely buried the Gators. And I thought right there, he's going to get fired. But eventually they rallied around and they went 7-5. So their record for Florida, I think, will be better than what the Badgers' record is this year. But I think when you look at this schedule and how tough it is, if Wisconsin can get to 5 wins and can be competitive in a few other games against some of these top-tier teams, I think it could be enough to actually rally some confidence around Luke Fickell. Say, okay, you know what? Maybe we got something here. I don't think 2025 for Wisconsin is going to be about the win total as it is the competition level. Can you compete and give Alabama a game? Can you go to Oregon and push them? Well, Ohio State comes to town. Can you take advantage and, again, make it close? Make them sweat. Can you go to Minnesota and win a road game? Can you go to Indiana and win a road game? Like, I think to me, it's going to be about how you compete and how tough you are in these games versus just what your flat-out win total is. Again, Billy Napier, when Florida went 7-5, I think if you told Florida fans before the year, hey, if you go 7-5, is Billy Napier coming back? I think most would say no. But who they beat, how they competed, I think gave Billy Napier enough rope where he's back in 2025. And there's actually some feelings of positivity. Now, their quarterback, DJ Lagway, helps with that. But still, in Florida, I mean, Wisconsin's got, kind of a turnstile of transfer portal quarterbacks. There's no 5-star guy right there sitting that gives you positivity for the future. But if Wisconsin can compete, be competitive in most of these games, that to me will speak larger about what Luke Fickell is building than just looking strictly at the win-loss total and saying, okay, you went 4-8, you're out of here.